Hello, horror listeners. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button for the channel. Also, make sure to tell us in the comments how you like the story and from where you are watching or listening. If you want to hear any specific story, feel free to request it. Now let's begin the story. I never thought working fast food would leave me with scars I still feel years later. Not the kind you see on your skin, but the kind that makes your stomach knot when you drive down a certain stretch of road or when a door chime rings in the middle of the night. My name's Jordan Kelly, and when I was 27, I worked the overnight weekend shifts at a Wendy's in a small town called Brookhaven, Indiana. If you've ever driven through rural Indiana, you know the kind of town I mean. A single high school, a couple gas stations, one movie theater that hadn't updated its seats since the early 90s. And off Highway 41, tucked between a liquor store and an abandoned pawn shop, sat our Wendy's. I had been there just over 9 months at the time. I took the job to help cover rent and chip away at student loans while I tried to finish community college classes during the week. My life back then was a blur of textbooks, microwaved ramen, and long nights behind that greasy counter. I wasn't proud of it, but the money was decent, and to be honest, I didn't have many options. I'd left college the first time after my dad passed away, and going back later meant I was already behind most people my age. Weekends were the hardest. Friday and Saturday nights I worked the graveyard, which ran from 10 p.m. until close at 6 a.m. In theory, there was always a prep cook with me until around 2 a.m., but after that, it was just me. Alone in that old building, the fryers shut down, the lobby dark, and only the drive-thru open for the occasional drunk customer who wanted chicken nuggets at 4 in the morning. At first, I thought I could handle it. The quiet was almost peaceful. I'd bring a notebook or a used textbook to the counter, sip Diet Coke, and convince myself I was multitasking, earning money and studying at the same time. The truth was, by 3 a.m., I was usually fighting to keep my eyes open. That kind of tired where your bones feel heavy, your eyelids sting, and every sound seems sharper, like your body is trying to stay alert against your will. The strangest part of working those nights wasn't the customers, it was the building itself. The Wendy's was old, built in the late 70s and barely updated since. The tiles near the bathrooms were cracked, the neon sign out front buzzed like a dying insect, and the automatic door sensors would sometimes go off even if no one was there. My manager, Debbie, used to joke, "This place is held together by duct tape and French fry grease." She wasn't wrong, but it wasn't the quirks of the building that still haunt me. It was that one night in late October when everything went sideways. It was a Saturday, the kind of crisp, dry night where the air feels like it's warning you of winter. The wind had been kicking up since evening, rattling the cheap aluminum frame of the drive-thru sign. I came in at 10 p.m., already worn out from a full day of classes and a group project that had stretched way longer than it should have. My coworker that night was Ethan, a 17-year-old kid who had perfected the art of doing the absolute bare minimum. He wore one AirPod the entire shift and communicated mostly in shrugs. By 1:50 a.m., he'd finished scrubbing the last fryer, tossed his apron in the corner, and mumbled, "Later, Jordan," before clocking out. That left me alone. At 2:10, I locked the front doors like always, flipped the switch to drive-through only, and sat at the counter with a half-empty bottle of Diet Coke and a laminated cleaning checklist I had no intention of completing yet. I just needed a minute to breathe. I leaned back on the stool, staring at the fluorescent lights humming above me. My eyelids got heavy. I thought maybe I'd just rest them for a second when I heard it. Ding. The buzzer. Every time the front doors opened, the system let out this sharp, high-pitched chime, the kind that cuts straight through your chest. Only thing was, the doors were locked. I'd checked them myself after Ethan left. I sat up, adrenaline shaking the fatigue out of my body. Ding again. I stood, heart thudding, and walked around the counter to the lobby. The place was empty. Chairs stacked upside down on tables, the soda machine humming softly. Through the glass doors, the parking lot stretched out under the orange glow of the lamps. Nobody there. I told myself it had to be the wind. The doors were old. Maybe the sensor was faulty. This was Brookhaven's forgotten Wendy's after all. I went back behind the counter, sat down and laughed nervously at myself. "Get a grip, Jordan," I muttered. That's when I saw it. A shadow moved across the side window, I jumped up so fast I knocked the Diet Coke bottle to the floor. My breath caught as I rushed to the glass. Outside, across the street under a flickering streetlight, sat a car I didn't recognize. Old, boxy, parked crooked, half on the curb, like whoever left it didn't care about tickets. Its paint was dull, streaked with dirt. Instinct made me grab my phone. I snapped a picture, zoomed in, and saw what I almost wish I hadn't. The driver's seat wasn't empty. A silhouette sat slouched low, almost like they were trying not to be seen. I told myself maybe it was someone sleeping off a drunk night, but then slowly the figure sat upright and turned their head directly toward me. I stumbled back from the window so quickly I nearly tripped over a mop bucket. My chest tightened. My ears rang. That's when I heard her voice. "Who's out there, honey?" I froze. At a corner booth sat Mrs. Collins, one of our regulars. Not really a customer, more of a wanderer. She was 79, a former nurse from the assisted living home down the road. She had dementia, late stage. Sometimes she slipped out at night, and we'd call the facility to pick her up. She'd come in earlier, around 11, humming softly and coloring in a children's book I'd given her. I'd poured her a cup of coffee, black, on the house. I had almost forgotten she was still there. "What did the man want?" she asked again, her watery blue eyes looking straight at me. My stomach dropped. "What man?" I asked carefully. She pointed a shaky finger toward the door. "The one who rang. He's been here before, hasn't he?" Before I could answer, the drive-through headset crackled. "Hey!" A man's voice, low, raspy. Relief hit me at first. A customer, that's all. Something normal. "Yeah," I said, putting the headset on. "We're open. Go ahead with your order." Silence. "Hello?" I tried again. That's when the laugh came. Low, male, wet like someone choking on their own spit. It dragged on too long, filling my ear with static. Then the line went dead. I ripped the headset off. The car was still there. That's when I saw Russell, the night janitor from the gas station next door. He was making his slow way across the lot toward the dumpsters. I banged on the glass until he looked over, then motioned frantically. When he got close, I cracked the door. "Did you see that car?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, been there a while. Saw a guy walking behind your building earlier. Gave me the creeps." My mouth went dry. "Can you stay with me? Just for a bit?" He hesitated, then nodded. "I'll circle the lot. Keep watch." I locked the door behind him and turned back toward the dining room. That's when I noticed movement inside. A man stood by the far window. No, not a man. It was Mr. Avery, another resident from the assisted living place. He was 82, an old painter with Alzheimer's who sometimes wandered. He wasn't supposed to be there. But there he was, shuffling slowly, a clean paintbrush in his hand, swiping invisible strokes across the air, like he was painting something only he could see. "Mr. Avery," I whispered. He paused, tilted his head. His voice came out clear, calm, in a way I'd never heard from him before. "Don't answer the door alone. He'll hurt you." I froze. "Why would you say that?" I asked, voice shaking. He smiled faintly, shrugged. "The man told me." Before I could respond, movement flashed at the side window. I turned and locked eyes with him. The man from the car. His face was pale, hollow-eyed, lips cracked. His hoodie was torn, jeans stained with something dark. His gaze drilled into me, unblinking. I screamed. He bolted. I called 911 with shaking hands. The dispatcher kept me on the line until 2 officers arrived. They swept the lot, talked to Russell, and finally came inside to take my statement. "There was a break-in tonight," one officer said. "Couple blocks from here. Woman was attacked in her home. Suspect tore through her medicine cabinet looking for narcotics. She survived, but she's shaken up." He looked at me seriously. "If your doors hadn't been locked, if you hadn't called, it could have been you." I didn't respond. My eyes drifted to Mr. Avery, still humming softly as he painted flowers on the window. They never caught the man, at least not that I ever heard. A week later, I handed in my resignation. I couldn't shake those hollow eyes, couldn't shake the way 2 people with late-stage dementia had seemed to know he was there before I did. Coincidence, maybe, or maybe not. I still have that photo of the car on my phone. I can't bring myself to delete it. And sometimes when I drive past the old Wendy's on Highway 41, empty now, windows boarded up, I swear I feel someone watching me. From the shadows, from the night, from just beyond the locked glass. Story 2. I never thought the graveyard shift would change me. To be honest, when I first applied at Wendy's, I saw it as nothing more than a paycheck, a way to keep the lights on and scrape together some savings while I figured out what the hell to do with my life. I was 24, broke, and fresh off a breakup that left me crashing in my cousin's spare room in a town I never planned to stay in. The place was called Harper's Ridge, Missouri, a speck along Highway 19 that most people blew past without slowing down. A gas station, a Family Dollar, a diner that shut down after 9, and then our Wendy's. The only thing open 24/7 within a 25-mile radius. It sat at the edge of town like a lighthouse, buzzing red and yellow against a stretch of highway that led into nothing but woods and farmland. At night, Harper's Ridge felt abandoned. After the gas station closed at midnight, it was just me and the wind howling against the windows. That was exactly why I thought the job would be perfect. I didn't want crowds. I didn't want managers breathing down my neck. I just wanted the quiet, or at least that's what I thought. Before all of this, I'd been studying criminal justice at a community college in St. Louis. Thought I might go into law enforcement. My dad was a corrections officer, and my mom always said I had the eye, the way I noticed details others ignored. Truth is, I didn't really know what I wanted. I drifted, I partied too much, skipped classes, and one semester turned into a permanent leave of absence. Then came Rachel. 3 years together. She was my anchor until she wasn't. After she left, the walls of the city felt too tight and the bills too big. So I packed up my clothes in black trash bags, tossed them in the back of my old Chevy, and landed in Harper's Ridge with my cousin Darren. He said I could stay a few months tops. That was 9 months ago. The Wendy's gig was supposed to be temporary, a placeholder, but after what happened, I'll never think of it the same. My shift was 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 5 nights a week. After 11, the lobby closed and we were drive-through only. My manager, Linda, a tired woman in her 40s who chain-smoked during inventory, always left by midnight. That left me alone with the fryers, the grill, and the ever-present hum of the refrigerators. Most nights it was dead quiet, a handful of customers between midnight and 3 a.m., usually truckers, nurses coming off shift, or the occasional drunk who slurred out a complicated order they barely remembered picking up. By 4, silence returned, broken only by the crackle of the fryer or the buzz of the fluorescent lights overhead. I liked that silence. I thought it was safe. I was wrong. It was a Tuesday in late October. I remember because the air was colder than usual, and the parking lot lights seemed dimmer, swallowed by fog rolling in from the woods behind the building. Linda was in a foul mood that night, muttering about her ex-husband while counting cases of chicken patties. "You're lucky, Jason," she told me, tapping her pen against the clipboard. "No kids, no alimony, just yourself to worry about." I laughed weakly. "Yeah, real lucky." She left at 11:57, just like always, and then it was just me. The first couple hours dragged. I mopped the floor twice, restocked ketchup packets, ate a Frosty I wasn't supposed to, checked my phone a dozen times even though no one was texting. By 2 a.m., I was sitting at the counter, scrolling aimlessly, the headset resting around my neck. That's when it pinged. Beep. The sound made me flinch. I hadn't heard an order all night. I slid the headset on. "Welcome to Wendy's. Go ahead whenever you're ready." Static, then breathing. Not the normal background shuffle of someone fumbling for change. This was slow, ragged, heavy. "Hello?" I asked, my voice thinner than I intended. The breathing continued, then a voice, low and harsh, like gravel dragged across concrete. "Don't say a word. Just open the back door." My chest tightened. For a second, I thought it had to be a prank. Some bored teenager messing with the frequency. But then the voice came again. Closer, sharper. "Now!" I ripped the headset off, heart hammering. My eyes darted to the security monitors above the office door. 4 black and white feeds. Parking lot empty. Drive-through lane empty. Back door camera. Dead. Static. Then came the bang. Bam! The steel back door shook on its hinges. I froze. Another slam. Louder. The handle rattled. I bolted into the office, slammed the door, and locked it. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. No signal. Not a single bar. Come on, come on, I muttered, pacing in the cramped office. I tried calling 911 anyway. Nothing but a dead beat. My eyes landed on the dusty company radio. Linda said only reach the gas station across the street. I snatched it up, pressed the button. Hello? Anyone? This is Jason at Wendy's. Somebody's trying to... Static. No reply. And then, silence. The banging stopped. The air felt heavy, as though the building itself was holding its breath. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. The only sound was my pulse in my ears. Finally, I unlocked the office door and stepped back into the kitchen. Everything looked untouched. The fryers hissed quietly. The clock above the prep station ticked past 2:30. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe that's when I saw it. Blood. Smeared across the back door's push bar, streaked down onto the concrete outside the window. My stomach dropped, and then the knob jiggled. I spun toward the front, ready to run, but I froze. He was already inside. Tall, gaunt, maybe mid-30s. A torn gray hoodie clung to him, soaked dark at the sleeve. His face was pale, streaked with dirt and blood, eyes wide and sunken like he hadn't slept in days. In his hand, a pistol glistened under the harsh fluorescent lights. On the ground, he said, calm, almost polite. I didn't move fast enough. His tone sharpened. Down! I dropped to my knees, hands raised. The smell hit me. Sweat, iron, rot. I'm not here to hurt you, he muttered, voice trembling beneath the surface. I just need your keys, your phone. That's it. I swallowed hard. Take them, please. He snatched my phone from my pocket, my wallet from the counter. His eyes darted around, frantic, like an animal cornered. That's when he spotted the duct tape near the prep station. Hands behind your back. My throat went dry. Please, you don't have to. Now, I obeyed. The tape dug into my wrists, cutting circulation. He bound my ankles too, breathing heavy, muttering something under his breath I couldn't make out. When he finished, he stepped back, gun wavering in his grip. I'm sorry, he whispered. I just need to get out of here. Then he was gone. The jingle of my keys, the slam of the front door, the roar of my Chevy's engine fading into the night. I lay there for what felt like hours, duct tape biting into my skin, the smell of grease and blood filling my nose. Eventually the tape loosened, maybe from the sweat, maybe from the oil on my hands. I peeled it off and stumbled to the office. This time the landline worked. 911, what's your emergency? The words crumbled out of me. By the time officers arrived, 2 cruisers with lights cutting through the fog, I was shaking so bad I could barely stand. They cleared the building, found nothing, checked the cameras, only static on the back feed. By noon, detectives told me the man had been caught 40 miles east in the town of Mill Creek. He crashed my truck outside a pawn shop, bleeding everywhere as he tried to sell my phone. Turned out he'd escaped custody days earlier. Violent record, armed robbery, aggravated assault. He'd killed a clerk at a gas station just 2 nights before. They told me I was lucky. I didn't feel lucky. I quit Wendy's that week, had the last paycheck mailed. I still can't stand the ping of a drive-through headset. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I swear I hear breathing in my ear. And when I close my eyes, I see blood smeared across that steel door. Story 3. I never liked working nights. If I'm being honest, I don't think anyone really does. It messes with your body, your sleep, your head. But bills don't wait for you to get comfortable, and rent was chewing through every paycheck. That's what I reminded myself every Friday at 10:45 p.m., right before I clocked in for my shift at the Wendy's off Highway 214, just outside a small Ohio town called Mason Hollow. I was 26, single, and living in a crummy 1-bedroom basement apartment behind a strip mall laundromat that always smelled faintly like mildew. My parents lived 2 states away, my college degree hadn't gone anywhere useful, and I was barely keeping up with utilities. So when the district manager asked if I'd be willing to take the overnight shifts, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., I said yes. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't afford to say no. It was supposed to be temporary. Just a few months, stack some savings, then move on. That's what I told myself every night. But some things stick with you. Our overnight team was always thin. 4 people, sometimes only 3 if someone called out. That Friday, October 28th, I remember because we just put up cheap Halloween decor. We had the usual skeleton crew, as my manager liked to joke. Derek, the cook, early 30s, heavy-set, quiet. He'd been at this Wendy's for nearly 5 years and moved like he'd seen it all before. Good guy, though, always humming old country songs under his breath. Lily, the part-timer, 17, still in high school. She was smart, sweet, but constantly on her phone if no one was watching. Her mom made her take this job. Tracy, our overnight manager, mid-40s, sharp, no-nonsense type. She spent most of the shift in the office doing inventory, payroll, or corporate emails, but she'd step out if something was wrong. And then there was me, Evan Miller, front register, headset for the drive-thru, trash runs, lobby cleanup, whatever needed doing. Security wasn't required for us. Mason Hollow was technically low crime. But I never liked how isolated our Wendy's was. It sat in the middle of a dead strip of buildings, a shuttered video rental place, an abandoned Dollar Tree, and across the cracked lot, a fenced-off drainage canal surrounded by overgrown brush. No one went out there after dark, not unless they had to. It started normal enough. Drive-thru was steady until around 12:30 a.m., mostly truckers and late-night stragglers. By 12:45, it was dead quiet, just the hum of the fryers and the buzz of the fluorescent lights. I poured myself a small coffee, more for warmth than caffeine, and told Derek I was going to grab my heavier jacket from my car. "Take Lily with you," Derek said without looking up from the fryer. "She's wiping tables." He grunted. "Fine. Don't stay out there long. Creepy back lot." I smirked, but truthfully I agreed. I pushed through the back door, coffee in one hand, keys in the other. My car was parked maybe 20 feet away, under one of the dim orange lights. The lot was cracked, uneven, with weeds pushing through. I leaned against the hood of my car, sipped coffee, and lit a cigarette. I'd been trying to quit, but night shifts had a way of dragging me back. That's when I heard it, a faint ting, like metal brushing metal. I froze, glanced toward the fence at the far end of the lot. Probably a raccoon or stray cat, I thought. They sometimes squeezed under the chain link to dig through trash. I exhaled smoke, tried to shake it off. Then it came again. Ting, jingle, ting. And it wasn't at ground level, it was higher up. I frowned, waved my arm in a circle to reactivate the motion light above the door. It buzzed and flickered to life. That's when I heard it. 3 sharp clinks, then silence. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded awkward, too casual, like I was pretending not to be scared. No answer. The fence stood still, half hidden in shadows. No movement, no animals. Still, my neck prickled. I started back toward the door, coffee sloshing in my hand. That's when the fence shook. Violently. Not like an animal, like someone was grabbing it. I froze, my breath hitched. And then I saw it. A shape. Tall, upright. On the opposite side of the fence. Tugging, jerking at the chain links like it wanted to climb over. I bolted. Coffee spilled across my hand as I fumbled with the door handle. My fingers slipped once. Then I yanked it open and slammed it shut behind me. My heart hammered. And then the knob twisted. I gasped and grabbed it with both hands. Something on the other side was trying to force it open. The metal jerked violently in my grip. Once, twice, again. Then it stopped. I radioed Tracy, voice shaking. "Someone's at the back door, trying to come in." A pause. Then her voice crackled back. "You sure?" "Yes, I saw them at the fence. They tried the door." Within seconds, Tracy came rushing to the back with Derek trailing behind her. "You okay?" Derek asked. I think so. But someone was out there. They grabbed the fence. They tried the door. Tracy frowned, lips tight, and led us into the office. She pulled up the security feed. My stomach dropped. The screen showed me standing by my car, smoking, waving at the light, calling out. But the fence? Empty. No shape, no figure. And the door? The footage showed me rushing inside, slamming it shut. The handle moved, jerking violently, over and over, but there was no one touching it. "See?" I snapped. "Look at the knob, it's moving. I wasn't touching it." Derek leaned closer. "That's actually real." Tracy replayed the footage. The fence gave a faint shudder just before I bolted. Barely visible. "Could be the wind," Derek muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. "There wasn't any wind," I shot back. Tracy's face was pale. "No alarms went off. No breach on the fence. I'll have it checked in the morning." None of us went near the back door again. We cleaned quickly, stayed up front, kept the lobby lights blazing. Lily noticed the tension and kept asking what was wrong. Derek just told her, "Don't worry about it. Just stay inside." At 7:10 a.m., when Derek clocked out, he stopped next to me. "I've been here years," he said softly. "Never seen anything like that." "Yeah," I muttered. He hesitated, lowering his voice. "You know what's weird? Even in daylight, there's something about that back lot. Feels like someone's always out there, watching. You just can't see them." I stared at him. "You think I imagined it?" He shook his head. I think you saw something we weren't supposed to see." I never took my breaks outside again. I stopped smoking completely, chewed gum instead. Every trash run was done in pairs, never after midnight. Tracy filed the incident as employee misunderstanding. Corporate never mentioned it again. 2 days later, Tracy told me quietly that the footage of the door handle, the one that showed it jerking on its own, had corrupted during backup. The file was gone. Eventually, I transferred to a different Wendy's across town. Told myself it was for better hours and pay. Truth was, I just couldn't stand that back lot. The silence, the shadows. Sometimes in dreams I see it again. The fence rattling, the knob twitching, and a shape that was definitely there, even if no one else could see it. Story 4. I used to think night shifts were just dull. That's usually how I start when people ask me what happened, because it's the truth. Most of the time, nights at Wendy's were painfully quiet. Hours of cleaning, prepping, and trying to stay awake under the harsh fluorescent lights. No drama, no real excitement. Just the hum of machines and the smell of fryer oil that never seemed to leave my clothes. My name is Aaron Matthews. Back then I was 27, living in a nowhere town called Fairview Junction in southern Ohio. Fairview wasn't really a town so much as a roadside cluster, truck stop, gas station, 2 motels that smelled like mildew, and the Wendy's where I worked 5 nights a week. If you blinked while driving through, you'd miss it. I had moved there the year before, after a messy breakup and a failed attempt to finish college. Rent was cheaper than in the city, and I figured working nights would give me time to write during the day. I used to think I'd be a journalist. Funny, right? Instead, I was the night shift closer at a Wendy's that smelled like old grease and disinfectant. Night shifts at our Wendy's followed a rhythm. Families and truckers would come through during dinner hours. Then slowly the dining area would empty. By 11 p.m., you'd hear your own footsteps echo on the tile. My co-worker, Kara Benson, was 21. Always glued to her phone, usually on TikTok or FaceTime with her boyfriend. She worked drive-through, and I handled counter, prep, and closing the dining area. We didn't talk much beyond, "You got this order?" or "Can you mop the front?" But she wasn't bad company. We also had a kind of unofficial security. Officer Daniel Price, a state trooper. He wasn't on duty for us exactly, but most nights he'd park his cruiser in the lot, sip black coffee, and hang around. He said it helped break the monotony of highway patrol. For us, it made the night feel safer knowing someone with a badge was within shouting distance. That was the routine. Predictable, boring, until it wasn't. That night is burned into my memory. It was late October, windy, cold enough that the leaves rattled across the pavement like bones. I'd thrown on my faded red Wendy's hoodie, the smell of fryer grease already clinging to it. By 10:45, The last of the customers had left, leaving the dining area spotless and eerily silent. I was wiping down the counter, humming to myself, when the door chime rang. Ding! At first I thought it was just another straggler, maybe a trucker grabbing a burger before hitting the road. But when I looked up, I froze. A man stood just inside the doorway. Tall, maybe 6'2", brown hair plastered to his forehead, a plain gray t-shirt and jeans. At first I thought he was soaked from rain, but then the light caught him, and I realized it wasn't rain at all. It was blood. His shirt clung dark red to his chest. His jeans were stiff and stained, like he'd waded through something unspeakable. Drops slid from his fingertips onto the tile. Drip, drip, drip. My first thought was accident. Car crash, maybe? But then he looked up at me, and his eyes were glassy, unfocused. Not drunk, not high. Something else. Something worse. He stepped forward, voice flat, almost casual. "Do you got a sandwich for me?" For a moment, my brain refused to process the words. "I'm sorry?" "A sandwich," he repeated, glancing at the glowing menu board above my head. "Like a Baconator or something." The way he said it, like he was asking about the weather, made my stomach twist. Behind me, Kara sat in the break area, earbuds in, scrolling on her phone. She hadn't even looked up. My pulse hammered. My instincts screamed at me to keep calm, to keep things normal. So I forced a smile. "Sure, one Baconator coming up." I moved to the prep line, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the spatula. I glanced at Kara, then called out louder than necessary. "Hey, Kara, we're running low on lettuce. Can you grab some from the walk-in cooler?" She looked up, frowning. "We got plenty out here." "Not this bin, the one in the back," I said, locking eyes with her, widening mine. Something must have clicked. She hesitated, then slowly stood and slipped toward the back. The man swayed slightly, watching me. His left sleeve slid up, revealing a gash on his forearm, deep enough that fresh blood oozed down to his wrist. "You're bleeding," I said carefully. He blinked, dazed. "It's not mine." The mustard bottle slipped from my hand, clattering on the counter. "What?" "I don't think it's mine," he whispered, rubbing his temple. "I didn't mean to." Before I could react, the door chimed again. Ding! Relief surged through me. Officer Price. He stepped inside, casual as always, like it was just another coffee run. But I saw the way his eyes flicked to the man's soaked clothes, the blood dripping on the tile. "Evening?" Price said evenly, approaching slow. "How's it going tonight?" The man didn't turn. He just gripped the sandwich I slid across the counter, trembling. Price stepped closer. "You hurt, buddy?" The man finally looked at him. His jaw tightened. "I didn't mean to." "Yeah," Price said softly, like talking to a wounded animal. "I bet you didn't. Why don't you sit down? Let's get you some help." The man started backing toward the door. Then, sudden as lightning, he lunged. A flash of silver. Pocket knife. The sandwich dropped, splattering lettuce and bacon across the floor. Price moved fast. Training, instinct. He grabbed the man's wrist, twisted, forced the knife away. They grappled, blood smearing the tiles. Kara screamed from the back. I froze, heart pounding so hard I thought I'd faint. Within seconds, Price had the man on the ground, cuffed, panting, muttering the same phrase over and over. "I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to." The next hours blurred. Sirens, paramedics, detectives. They said the man had been in a nearby motel, where another man was found dead. Multiple stab wounds. The scene was brutal. The blood wasn't from him, it was from the victim. They thought he'd gone into shock, dissociated, walked straight from a murder scene into a Wendy's, asking for a sandwich like nothing happened. I sat in the back room, sipping cold coffee, hands still trembling. Price came by after giving his report, his voice steady but eyes tired. "You did good, Aaron." Kept him calm long enough. But I didn't feel like I'd done good. I felt hollow. Every time the door chimed after that, my chest seized. Every man in a hoodie looked like him. I lasted 2 more weeks before quitting. They gave us panic buttons, did a whole safety seminar, but none of that fixed the way the smell of grease mixed with the memory of blood on tile. I moved away the next spring, got a job at a library in Columbus. Day shift, safe shift. And yet, every time I pass a Wendy's, I still hear the chime of that door. Still see his blank eyes, the way he asked for a sandwich like he'd just left church instead of a murder scene. And I'll never forget what he whispered as they dragged him away in cuffs. I didn't mean to. Story 5. I never thought much about side jobs. At 18, I was still in that stage where money meant freedom, and I'd take whatever work came my way if it meant gas in the tank and a little extra in my pocket. My name's Daniel Brooks, and back then, I was living in a small town called Willow Creek, Nevada, a place people usually only pass through on the way to somewhere else. Willow Creek was quiet, dusty, and stubborn in the way old desert towns are. There were maybe 24 streets total, a post office, a couple of diners, one grocery store that doubled as the gossip hub, and a scattering of boarded-up shops from the days when Route 56 actually meant something. My mom worked nights as a nurse, my stepdad was a trucker who was gone more than he was home, and I spent most of my time working small gigs, demolition, cleanup, the occasional handyman job, stuff that didn't ask for a diploma or a resume. I got those jobs through Russell Hayes, a guy in his late 40s who had the kind of permanent tan you only get from decades under the Nevada sun. Russell wasn't exactly a friend, more like a middleman. He had a dented F-150, a bad cough from too many Marlboros, and a knack for sniffing out work where others saw nothing. He'd drop me off, hand me a list, and swing back at the end of the day with a wad of cash if I did the job right. "Got a big one for you Saturday," Russell said one evening when he stopped by my mom's place. He leaned against the doorframe, sipping coffee from a thermos that smelled more like whiskey than caffeine. Old Wendy's off the service road outside Elmont. Place is gutted, been closed down for years. Owner wants the interior stripped before they decide what to do with the lot. I hesitated. Everyone in town had heard something about that Wendy's. It was one of those buildings that looked wrong even in daylight. A square brick box with faded red trim and weeds clawing through the asphalt. Kids dared each other to run through the drive-through lane after dark. Nobody ever did, but I needed money. College wasn't happening for me, and if I wanted to get out of Willow Creek someday, every dollar mattered. "How long's the job?" I asked. "Shouldn't be more than a day's work," Russell said. "Booths, counter, kitchen line, walk-in cooler, standard teardown. I'll be back at 6 to get you. Just bring water, kid. Ain't no power out there." I agreed. That Saturday, just after sunrise, Russell's truck rattled into the Wendy's parking lot. I had my gloves, pry bars, hammer, and a gallon jug of water stuffed in a cooler bag. The building loomed, its sign bleached to almost nothing, its windows black like they were holding secrets. Russell killed the engine. "You good?" he asked. I nodded, though I wasn't. "Don't wander off," he said, half serious, half smirking. "Nothing but dust and snakes out here. I'll see you at 6. And just like that, I was alone. The first half of the day went smooth. I tore out booths, stripped tile from the front counter, hauled debris through the side door to stack in the blistering sun. By noon, sweat had soaked through my flannel. My hands were raw, but it was the good kind of tired, the kind where you could measure your progress by the pile of junk outside. I ate a sandwich on one of the old booths under the awning. The silence was thick. No cars on the road, no birds, just the occasional scrape of wind pushing dust across the lot. It felt like the whole world had forgotten this place existed. At 3, I moved into the kitchen. The grill was half disassembled already. I yanked it out with a dolly, unbolted the grease trap, cleared a path toward the walk-in cooler. That cooler was massive, steel doors, insulated walls, the kind of box that once held frozen patties and bags of fries. When I stepped inside, I felt it. Cold air. Not the memory of cold, not stale dampness, actual cold, which made no sense because there hadn't been power to this building in years. My breath fogged faintly. The shelves were mostly bare, just cracked plastic bins and rusted wire racks. I lingered only long enough to check before backing out. The door closed heavier than I meant, the latch clicking like a throat clearing. My stomach flipped, but when I shoved it open again, it moved fine. "Don't get jumpy," I muttered. By 4:30, I was done. I swept the floor, stacked my tools by the entrance, and finished the last of my water. Then I sat outside under the awning to wait. 6 o'clock came. No rustle. The sun dipped. Shadows stretched. I climbed the service ladder to the roof and scanned the horizon. Nothing but dirt, scrub, and an endless strip of blacktop. By 7, the temperature dropped fast. Desert nights are merciless. My flannel wasn't enough. I paced, hugged myself, tried the radio I'd brought along. It spat static, then died. The silence pressed in until my own breathing sounded loud. That's when I heard it. Thunk. Something heavy dropped inside. I froze. It wasn't the sound of wood settling or metal creaking. It was deliberate, like something being set down hard. "Russell!" I called, voice breaking. No answer. I grabbed my pry bar and stepped inside. Moonlight filtered through the broken tiles, painting the dining room silver. My boots crunched on dust. The sound had come from the kitchen. That's when I heard the whisper. Low, ragged, like words dragged through water. It came from the cooler. I backed away. "Nope," I whispered. "Nope." Another thud. Sharper this time, I bolted outside, chest heaving, and crouched by the scrap pile. My skin prickled. I wasn't alone. I could feel eyes on me, patient, unblinking. At one point, I caught movement by the old menu board. Something tall, too tall, slipping out of sight when I turned. I pressed myself against the wall, every muscle screaming to run. But where? Miles of desert in every direction. By 11, I was shaking so bad I could hardly grip the pry bar. Through the front window, I saw a shadow cross the hallway leading to the restrooms. Not crawling, not rushing, just walking, like it lived there. I stumbled backward, tripped on a tile stack, and hit the ground. Sand whipped into my face as the wind kicked up. Then, light, bright, blinding. "Kid!" Russell's voice. He sprinted toward me, headlamp bobbing, a half-eaten granola bar in his hand. Relief hit me so hard I almost sobbed. "You all right?" he asked, hauling me up. "You were supposed to be here at 6, I croaked. He grimaced. "Thought Mike's crew was picking you up. Mike thought I was. Didn't realize till 9. Drove like hell after that." I couldn't even answer. I just stared at the Wendy's, its dark windows staring back. "Place looks like it spooked you," Russell said. "You look pale as a ghost." "Russell," I said, voice trembling. "Did you know anything about that building?" He shrugged. "Just rumors. Some employee went nuts years back. Locked the night manager in the cooler. Murder-suicide. They say he still walks the halls. But you know how people talk." I didn't answer. I just climbed into the truck and didn't look back until the Wendy's disappeared into the black desert. I never went back to that lot. Never worked alone again either. Not without 2 flashlights, spare batteries, and twice the water. But sometimes when the wind is strong enough, I swear I still hear it. That whisper. Cold, wet, impossible. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I see the shadow. Not rushing, not creeping, just walking, like it belonged there. Like it was still waiting. Story 6. I was 8 years old when it happened. Back then, life felt simple, at least to me. School, cartoons, and the occasional trip for fast food were the highlights of my week. My parents weren't rich, but they made do. My dad, Daniel Hayes, worked for the county's Department of Transportation in Riverton, Ohio, while my mom, Laura, had a clerical job at the same government complex. They weren't the type to hire babysitters. If they could, they just brought me along. That government building was massive, 3 stories tall, with peeling beige paint and those ugly greenish linoleum floors that smelled faintly of bleach no matter what time of day. The ceiling lights buzzed like trapped insects. My parents hated working late there, but sometimes deadlines left them no choice. And every time we stayed late, we had the same ritual. Wendy's. There was an old Wendy's across the street, tucked beside a closed-down Payless shoe source. That Wendy's became a kind of second home for me on Friday nights. My order was always the same. 4-piece nuggets, small fries, a chocolate Frosty. The staff eventually learned my name. Some would ruffle my hair, others would slip me an extra packet of dipping sauce. For a kid, it felt special, safe. But not everyone who hung around that Wendy's made me feel safe. There was one man in particular, security guard for the government building, who stood out. His name wasn't Mark, but that's what I'll call him. Mark was tall, broad-shouldered, with a shaved head that reflected the fluorescent lights and a smile that stretched too far across his face. He always smelled like strong cologne, the kind that lingered even after he walked away. At first, he seemed friendly. He'd crouch down to my level and say things like, "Hey, champ, password?" pretending to block the Wendy's door until I made up something silly. I laughed the first few times. My mom said he was a good guy. My dad, I don't think he ever liked him. He never said much, but the way his jaw tightened when Mark talked to me said enough. Still, Mark was everywhere. Nights at the office, he'd patrol the halls with his heavy flashlight. Sometimes he'd pop into the Wendy's after his rounds. Always smiling, always chewing gum, always watching. The night it happened, it was pouring. Not just rain, sheets of it, like the sky was coming apart. My mom picked me up from school, and by evening we were at Wendy's before heading into the office. I remember pressing my face against the restaurant window while rain streaked down, smearing the red glow of the Wendy's sign into something ghostly. My dad grabbed the food, shaking water from his jacket, and we carried our dinner across the street into the government building. By 9, I was in the break room, swinging my legs under a chair, dipping nuggets into barbecue sauce, watching an old cartoon play fuzzily on a small TV. The building was mostly empty, just a skeleton crew working, and Mark doing his rounds. That's when he appeared in the doorway. "Hey, buddy," he said, flashing that too-wide grin. "Got your nuggets?" "Yeah," I mumbled through a mouthful of fries. "Want to see something cool?" I looked at my mom. She barely glanced up from her stack of files. "Don't go far. Stay with Mark," she said absently. That was it. No second thought, no hesitation. She trusted him. I got up, grabbed my Frosty, and followed him out. He led me down the east stairwell, his flashlight beam dancing along the walls. Offices we passed were dark, humming only with old vending machines. The building felt different at night, emptier, heavier, wrong somehow. "You ever seen the basement?" Mark asked. I shook my head. "My parents said not to go far." He chuckled. "It's fine. Just a quick look. I used to be your age, you know. I know all the cool spots in this place." Reluctantly, I followed. The stairwell echoed with each step as we descended. At the bottom, Mark unlocked a heavy metal door and pushed it open. The basement smelled musty, like dust and coffee grounds long gone stale. Pipes crisscrossed overhead, and the hum of unseen machinery reverberated through the walls. "Boiler room's down here," he said casually. "Want to see it?" Before I could answer, he folded a scrap of paper into a quick airplane, tossed it down the hall. "Go grab it, then throw it back." I laughed and ran after it. The plane landed near a janitor's closet. Then, click. The lights snapped off. The slam of a door echoed behind me, pitch black. "Mark?" I whispered. Silence. I tried again. Louder. "Mark!" Nothing. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. My Frosty slipped from my grip, splattering cold against the floor. Panic rose in my throat. I stumbled forward, banging into walls, groping for a doorknob. Every hallway felt longer than it should. My cries bounced off the concrete. At one point, I thought I heard footsteps, soft, deliberate. But when I spun around, there was only silence. I curled into a corner, shivering, sobbing into my sleeve. Meanwhile, my mom looked up from her paperwork. I hadn't come back. She checked the break room. Empty. "Daniel," she said sharply, "where's Evan?" My dad frowned. "Bathroom, maybe." But 10 minutes passed. Then 20. By 30, my parents were in full panic mode, scouring hallways, calling my name. By 10:15, my mom stormed to the lobby, and there was Mark, calmly leaning against the reception desk, sipping a soda. "Where is my son?" she demanded, eyes blazing. Mark blinked, chewing gum. "What do you mean? He was just with me. I told him to wait by the elevators. Must have wandered off." "What the hell do you mean, wandered off?" My dad barked, fists clenched. They tore through the building, shouting my name, opening doors. Nothing. Until my mom thought of the basement. Grabbing the master keys from a supply closet, they sprinted down. "Evan!" My mom's voice cut through the dark. I bolted toward the sound, slamming fists against a locked door. It opened. Light poured in. My mom scooped me up, sobbing into my hair. Behind her, my dad stared at Mark with thunder in his eyes. "What did you do?" he hissed. Mark just shrugged. He slipped away while I was showing him something cool. Mark was reported the next morning. By the end of the week, he was fired. But that wasn't the end. 2 months later, police showed up at our house. They had questions for my dad about data storage. Turns out Mark hadn't just been a weird guard. He'd been part of a small crime ring smuggling outdated government computers, selling them for parts and the sensitive data inside. They never proved what he intended that night. Maybe I was a distraction. Maybe he meant to come back for me after everyone else left. Maybe worse. I don't know. All I know is that I never went back to that Wendy's. Never set foot in that government building again. People think horror is all about ghosts, shadows, things that go bump in the night. But sometimes horror isn't supernatural. Sometimes it's a kid sitting in a pitch-black basement, realizing the grown-up who used to fold paper planes isn't smiling because he's nice. He's smiling because he knows something you don't. Sometimes horror wears a uniform. It smells like cologne. It chews gum. And it starts with, "Hey, champ, got your nuggets?" Story 7. I was 22 when it happened. Not a kid anymore, but not exactly sure-footed as an adult either. It was late 2020, smack in the middle of COVID lockdown uncertainty, when every job felt like a blessing you couldn't afford to lose. Back then, I lived in a small town in South Carolina called Ashwood Grove. If you Googled it, you'd barely find more than a population sign, a half-dead strip mall, and a handful of fast food chains clustered near the interstate exit. The Wendy's there was where I spent most of my nights. I hadn't planned on working fast food. Nobody does, really. I dropped out of community college after I couldn't keep up with online classes during COVID, and my mom had gotten sick around the same time. Bills stacked up faster than unemployment checks, and soon I was taking whatever hours I could get. The Wendy's was hiring. That was all I needed to hear. I was staying with my cousin Kara then. She had a cramped apartment above a nail salon downtown. She worked part-time at a grocery store and pulled DoorDash shifts when she could. The walls of her apartment were thin, the hot water inconsistent, and the smell of nail polish remover always clung to the carpet, but it was shelter. After my ex kicked me out of his trailer earlier that summer, I had nowhere else to go. Kara saved me. That's where my story begins. Broke, exhausted, and grateful just to have work. Most nights I clocked in at 4 p.m. and stayed until close. Ashwood Grove's Wendy's closed at 10 sharp, but cleaning and prep usually dragged until midnight. I didn't mind. The later the shift, the fewer customers, and the more control I felt over the store. My manager, Ms. Palmer, was in her mid-50s, sharp as nails, and allergic to small talk. She'd been in fast food since the 90s, wore her hair in a tight bun, and always smelled faintly of bleach and cigarettes. Strict, but fair. If you did your work, she left you alone. My main co-worker was Devin, 21, a line cook with a sarcastic streak but a good heart. He had tattoos that crawled up both arms and always wore a baseball cap backward, even under his headset. Sometimes a third person worked until 8, but usually by closing time, it was just me and Devin. We'd lock the doors, crank up the music on a Bluetooth speaker, clean the fryers, mop the lobby, and stock for the next day. Peaceful in its own weird way. But that peace shattered one Thursday night in February. It was one of those nights where the air outside felt thick, like rain was threatening but never coming. I clocked in just before 4 p.m. sharp, tying my apron tight. Kara had dropped me off since my car was out of commission again. She teased me, "Don't flirt with the fry grease," and sped off in her beat-up Civic. Inside, things were quiet. A slow trickle of customers, mostly locals, a couple of truckers, nothing unusual. At around 5:15 p.m., though, a car pulled in that made me pause. It was an old, dented blue SUV, parked crooked, taking up 2 spaces. 3 people climbed out, 2 men and a woman. The woman caught my attention first, tall, maybe late 30s, with bleached blonde hair tied back too tightly, oversized sunglasses covering half her face, even though the sky was already gray. She had on heavy lipstick that looked smeared at the edges. The men looked rough. Jeans, boots, too many rings on their fingers, like they were trying to flex money they didn't really have. They walked in with a strange kind of confidence, like they weren't just here for food. "Evening," I said with my practiced customer service smile. The woman leaned forward on the counter, smile stretched too wide. "You the one I talked to on the phone? About that sandwich?" I blinked. Maybe? Which one?" "The honey maple chicken thing. You guys don't let it go for takeout, remember?" She rolled her eyes. I gave a small laugh. "Yeah, sorry, dine-in only." Her smile softened. "No worries, sweetie, not your fault. Just doing your job." She ordered 2 of the honey maples, 1 regular chicken sandwich, and drinks. But what I noticed most wasn't her order. It was the red leather binder tucked under her arm with a black pen clipped to the spine. Odd detail for a fast food run. When I brought the tray to their booth, the woman leaned closer than necessary. Her perfume was overpowering, chemical sweet. "You from around here?" she asked casually. "Sort of," I said carefully. She smiled again. "We're expanding a business in this area. Ever thought about doing something besides this place?" I laughed politely. "This is just temporary. First job." "We run a private cleaning company," she said, lowering her voice like she was offering me something special. "High-end clients, small, discreet. Girls like you do well. Pretty face, good manners." I froze. Something about the way she said discreet made my stomach turn. One of the men leaned forward, finally speaking. 30 grand easy. Half the girls don't even lift a mop." I forced a smile. "I'm good, thanks." The woman pressed again. "At least come see our van, just to get an idea. It's out front." She lifted her phone slightly. "I've got pictures." I stepped back. "Sorry, I'm on shift. Gotta get back." Her smile tightened, but she didn't push further. The man chuckled under his breath. Low, unfriendly. They lingered over their food for nearly 40 minutes. Every time I glanced at the window, I saw the woman watching me. Finally, when they left, she looked back through the glass and gave me a slow, deliberate wave. I pretended not to see. Later that night, when Devon's grandmother picked us up, she gave us rides most nights since neither of us had reliable cars. I mentioned the strange cleaning job pitch. Her hands stiffened on the wheel. She pulled the car over, turned to me with a pale face and said, "That wasn't a cleaning job, sweetheart. That's how traffickers talk. Easy work, good pay, van out front. They target young girls who look like they need help. Don't you ever go near people like that again." Her words sank like a stone in my gut. My hands shook. I hadn't realized how close I'd been. I almost convinced myself I was overreacting. Maybe they were just MLM people. Maybe it was nothing sinister. But the next day proved me wrong. Around 11:30 a.m., during prep for lunch rush, a man walked in alone. Mid-40s, bald, clean-shaven, dressed neatly in a tucked-in, button-down shirt. He carried a red binder with a black pen clipped to it. My stomach dropped. He ordered only a black coffee, then sat in the booth near the window. No phone, no food, just the coffee and the binder. He scribbled in it occasionally, but mostly watched me. I tried to ignore it, refilling napkin dispensers, cleaning the front counter. But every time I glanced up, his eyes were on me. 2 hours passed. He never left. Finally, I heard him speak on the phone, voice low but clear enough. "Yeah, I moved it. Should be covered tonight. The girls are lined up. I'll send cuts. We need another place down here, closer to the water." My chest tightened. I dropped the rag I was holding and practically ran to the back. "Devon," I hissed. "That guy with the binder. He's with them. He's watching." Devon peeked out, then nodded grimly. "Stay close. We'll handle this together." We lingered near the booth under the pretense of cleaning. After 10 tense minutes, the man finally gathered his binder, stood and walked out without a word. I never saw him again. I put in my 2 weeks the next day. Ms. Palmer didn't ask why. Maybe she already knew. Maybe she'd seen it before. Even now, years later, I check the parking lot before getting into my car. I don't trust slow smiles from strangers or too sweet voices offering easy money. I still think about that woman's words dripping like syrup over poison. "You'd be perfect," but I wasn't. And thank God I never found out what she really meant. Story 8. I never thought a fast food job could change the way I see the world. But then again, people always said idle hours can be dangerous ones. My name's Marissa Lane, and when this all started, I was 19 years old. It was late summer of 2022 in a town called Fairview, Tennessee. A place so small you could drive through it in under 10 minutes with one Walmart, 2 gas stations, and just about nothing else worth mentioning. I hadn't planned on staying there long. I'd been living with my mom's older cousin Sandra ever since my mom passed from cancer the year before. Sandra was kind, but the house was cramped and money was tight. I told myself the job at Wendy's off Highway 41 was just temporary. A few paychecks, a chance to save up, maybe apply to a community college in Nashville. I didn't mind work, honestly. The night shifts were calmer than the chaotic daytime ones I liked. The hum of the fryers, the rhythm of wiping down counters, and the way the parking lot lights glowed in the mist after summer storms. Nights were quieter, less pressure, less small talk with coworkers. And for someone like me, quiet, private, not exactly social, that was perfect, but sometimes quiet isn't peace. Sometimes quiet gives space for something else to creep in. It was a Friday night in September when I noticed him. The storm had rolled through around 6 o'clock, heavy rain hammering the roof while we rushed through the dinner crowd. By 8, the lot outside was shining black, with water reflections of street lamps broken by ripples every time a car drove past. I was on register that night. My coworker Terrell, a 23-year-old with a loud laugh and too much energy, was back on sandwich prep. Our manager Karen was in her office balancing payroll sheets. It was one of those shifts where the place felt hollow, like the building itself was holding its breath. That's when he walked in. At first glance, nothing screamed trouble, early 30s, maybe about average height. He wore a faded navy hoodie, the hood down with jeans that looked worn but not dirty. Dark hair, a beard that hadn't been trimmed in a while. He kept his hands in his pockets as he stepped inside, pausing just past the door like he wasn't sure whether he'd stay. I gave my usual greeting, automatic. "Hey there, welcome to Wendy's. Can I take your order?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes moved up toward the glowing menu board behind me, then back down to mine. Not wide, not angry, just still, a little too still. Finally, he muttered, "What's the cheapest thing you got?" I forced a polite smile. You can do the 4 for $4 meal. Comes with a junior cheeseburger, nuggets, fries, and a drink." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, that." I rang it up. "That'll be $4.35. He pulled a crumpled bill and some change from a cracked leather wallet. As he handed it over, he asked, "You been here long?" "Few months," I said, eyes flicking to the screen. "You like it?" "It's all right." He looked at me a beat longer, then said, "You look like you'd be doing more than this." The words hit heavier than they should have. Not a compliment, not exactly an insult, just something deliberate. I chuckled politely. "A lot of us do." He glanced at my name tag. "Marissa," he said softly. "Pretty name." The way he said it made the hairs on my arms stand up. Not loud, not teasing, just slow, intentional. I busied myself, grabbing his drink cup, passing him his change. "It'll be ready in a minute." Instead of sitting in the far booths like most people did, he chose the table directly across from the counter. He ate slow, painfully slow, every few minutes lifting his head to watch me. Not obvious staring, just enough, just steady. Terrell leaned through the kitchen window at one point and whispered, "Yo, that guy's giving creep vibes." "You noticed too?" I muttered. "Hell yeah. You want me to hand him the food next time?" I shook my head. "Nah, I'll just be quick." When his food was ready, I slid the bag over. "Have a good night." "No thank you," no smile. He just took it, filled his drink, and sat back down. When I came back from the break room with my bag and keys, I noticed he was gone. Relief rushed through me. "Finally left," Terrell said. "Slipped out maybe 5 minutes ago." I exhaled. "Good. You want me to watch while you head out?" I almost said no. I didn't like making a big deal out of things, but something in my gut told me not to brush it off. "Yeah, I'd appreciate that." He nodded. "Bet." The humid night air wrapped around me as I stepped outside. The lot was nearly empty. Just my car under the second light post, shadows stretching long across the pavement. My shoes squeaked against the damp ground as I walked halfway across. That's when I saw it, a figure shifting behind the dumpster, a shadow separating from shadows. My heart lurched. He stepped out, the hoodie, the beard, the stillness. "Hey," he called, his voice cracked against the night. "You got a minute?" "No," I said, backing toward the door. "I'm off the clock." He stepped closer. "I just want to talk. You seem like someone who'd understand me." My fingers wrapped around the pepper spray on my lanyard. Then the door banged open behind me. Terrell's voice boomed. "Yo, man, back off!" The guy froze, eyes cutting from me to Terrell. He let out a scoff, turned, and walked off into the shadows. No car, no ride. Just gone. My hands shook as I unlocked my car. That night, I barely slept. The next week it started. Blocked number, no caller ID. The first time I answered, it was just breathing. The second, the same. The third, a whisper. "You always smile. I like that." I blocked every unknown number, but they kept coming. At work, I asked Karen if the cameras caught outside footage. She shook her head. "System only covers inside. Corporate cut costs." So I parked closer to the door. I kept my pepper spray in my pocket. I told myself it was just some loser with too much time. Then one night, I came out to my car and found a folded piece of paper under my wiper. 4 words written in messy black ink. "You can't avoid me." I showed the note to the police. To my surprise, they took it seriously. A patrol car even circled the lot during closing shifts. But they couldn't do much without proof of who it was. Then for about 2 weeks, nothing. No calls, no notes, no sightings. I let myself breathe again. Thought maybe it was over, until the night at Home Depot. I wasn't working. It was a Saturday. I'd gone with Sandra to buy some tools for her shed. She stayed up front, and I wandered down the power tools aisle. The place was quiet, echoing with faint music from the ceiling speakers. That's when I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate. I turned. It was him, hoodie, beard, the same eyes that never moved fast. My stomach turned ice. He smiled faintly. "You thought you could forget me?" I froze. "I missed that smile," he said softly. "You shouldn't have run last time." I stepped back. My voice broke, but I forced it loud. "I don't know you. Stay away from me." It echoed down the aisle. Other customers turned. A worker rushed over. The man hesitated, jaw tightening. Then he bolted, weaving past carts, disappearing into the parking lot before anyone could stop him. The police came. This time, they pulled the security footage. This time, they opened a full investigation. I moved out of Sandra's house, staying with a friend across town. Sandra helped me install cameras at the house. My phone buzzes now and I jump. A knock at the door makes my chest lock up. Every shadow feels heavier than it should. Because some men don't want your number. Some don't just want your smile. Some want your life in pieces, 1 minute at a time. And they don't stop when you say no.